guess we're live. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Let me go ahead and share our slides. Good afternoon. My name is Ann Osterman. I'm with VIVA. We're so happy to be with you here today. I am the director of VIVA, and I'm joined by Jenya O'Gara, who is our deputy director, and Sophie Rondeau, who is our assessment and e-resources program analyst. We are here to talk about two initiatives within our affordable course content program, and we will take questions at the end, so please go ahead and put them in the chat. Either Zoom or Pathable, we'll try to find your questions, and we'll go ahead and get started. So VIVA is Virginia's Academic Library Consortium. We have 71 members, both public and private. We've been around since 1994, and our programs for a very long time were cooperative purchasing of collections and resource sharing of our members' print and other collections. But more recently, since around 2016, we've gotten engaged with open and affordable course content initiatives. So a little bit about this particular program in kind of the big sense. So in around maybe 2014, 2015, like for many of you all, we had a lot of our libraries across the state doing all kinds of interesting work with open education. We had faculty drafting textbooks. We had librarians helping their faculty find kind of OER and putting it all together for their courses as a new no-cost initiative for students. We had our community college system put together Z-degree programs. It was really kind of a tide swelling up. And then there were conversations about what could we do statewide? And luckily we already had VIVA as an existing kind of a program. And so the thought was to start with the Open Education Network, which at the time was the Open Textbook Network, in 2016. This is our pilot, a 2-year pilot. And so the 2-year pilot was pretty successful. We had a lot of adoptions, we had a lot of interest. And then we started talking to other groups all across the country. We're so grateful to Open Oregon and Lewis and OhioLink and others who kind of gave us ideas for a menu of options that we could think about what is the best thing for Virginia. And then we pitched that to the state, and we were lucky enough to get what we'd asked for, which is a brand new program, really. It's $600,000 in continuing funds, and that built our new open and affordable course content through VIVA. This got a number of initiatives together. We have, for example, course grants to help faculty adopt, adapt, and create open content. We expanded our Open Education Network system membership and some other smaller initiatives, but we also have within this an affordable course content program, and that's the part that we're focusing on today. So although our program really is grounded in open educational topics, we did realize that OER does not exist for every subject or level. So in order to meet the needs of the consortium, the program needed to provide both library-owned and affordable options at no cost to students to bridge the gap. The initial implementation of this part of our program was an instance of EBSCO Faculty Select, which we branded as the Faculty Textbook Portal. Through this service, you can see kind of the front page here, which began in January 2019, faculty are able to browse and select course content from a variety of sources, including OER, the consortium shared collection of ebooks, which we believe was a first for the EBSCO product, as well as ebooks for purchase. When they find a title that they like for a future course, faculty can submit a form to record the adoption of the OER or the shared ebook, or they can request a purchase. So VIVA then purchases the selected titles for individual schools, and that's a change from our usual practice of consortium-wide access. This really is a way to create targeted permanent additions to our library's collections that are directly relevant to the institution's curricula. There have been adoptions across a wide range of subjects for this program, with some subjects like biology, computer science, mathematics, performing arts, and sociology having adoptions in all 3 areas of open, shared, and purchase. We can also use this kind of a view to get a sense of which subjects might have particular gaps in OER. Health and history, for example, you can see have a large number of purchase items, and this might mean that we should consider creating targeted grants for OER in these areas. When we look at how the portal has been used by our 3 main public institution types, which are doctoral, 4-year, and 2-year, It's interesting to see that the largest number have been at our four-year institutions, including many purchases. Shared content, on the other hand, with titles from Taylor and Francis, Oxford University Press, and others, has been particularly successful with matching to courses at some of our two-year institutions. All of the content that we purchase through this program is fairly traditional academic library content, not textbook with a capital T, and it illustrates the strong natural connection between library collections and course content. This program has had adoptions recorded to date at 19 of our 39 public institutions, which feels like significant take-up. These adoptions have benefited over 5,000 students, which is a small number compared to statewide enrollment, but we hope directly relevant and helpful to those we've tried to reach. There has been an estimated student cost avoidance of over $500,000. An important point here is that the benefits go far beyond any initial course matching. The goal of this, as well as our open education programming, is long-term benefits from initial investment. These permanent additions to these libraries' collections have been shown to help students for multiple semesters, and we hope that the materials are relevant to the institution's curricula for many years. So the VIVA Faculty Textbook Portal has been successful in helping faculty identify resources with no cost to students for their courses, but it also laid the foundation for a natural expansion to how we could build our library's collections in ways that were relevant to their curricula. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sophie to talk about our curriculum-driven acquisitions program.
Thanks, Anne, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you advance the next slide, please? The curriculum-driven acquisitions program started with a fortuitous conversation and partnership with Virginia Commonwealth University in fall 2019, and they're one of our doctoral institutions. VCU had been wondering if there was a way to match bookstore lists to available content in the portal around the same time that VIVA was wondering if there was a way to use the faculty portal more proactively to match curricular materials to available content. We decided to take these questions to task and determine whether this could be a successful way to get library ebooks to students so that they would not need to incur the cost of buying their textbooks. At that time, we were working in EBSCO Host Collection Manager and matched 55 EBSCO ebooks and 9 VIVA shared ebooks to VCU's spring 2020 semester bookstore lists. And this resulted in an estimated student cost avoidance of just over $120,000. This was the pilot of what would become an extended pilot. The first full pilot semester with multiple institution types was completed in fall 2020, and we had 3 participating institutions. The pilot institutions were selected based on interest as well as student financial need. We used reports from the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia to help determine where financial need was based on, as well as interest among the institutions to participate. Excuse me. We issued the call to participate rather modestly at first through a commonly used VIVA listserv, since we had restrictions on the number of participating institutions. Participation requirements outlined in the call for expressions of interest included verification that the bookstore was willing to participate and acknowledgement of tight deadlines that needed to be met. Although VIVA handles the acquisitions of the ebooks, it really is a collaborative effort. The institution must verify duplication before titles are purchased, is responsible for notifying faculty when the URLs are available, as well as collecting adoptions data. Next slide, please. The first full extended pilot program results are in now. Ebooks were purchased through Gobi with institution-specific licenses, as well as consortial licenses for Taylor and Francis and EBSCO Faculty Select ebooks. VIVA purchased 203 ebooks and matched 24 VIVA shared ebooks through this program for the full semester. These books will reach over 5,200 students and create an estimated student cost avoidance of over $245,000 for this semester. Since these books are owned by the institution, they will be available for subsequent use in the courses. The pilot will be extended through the spring with the same 3 participating institutions to capture more complete data and provide a full picture of an academic year. Next slide. Here's an outline of the acquisitions, CDA or curriculum-driven acquisitions workflow. We use a 3-week interval to ensure faculty receive ebook links with enough time to share them with students before the semester begins. And students have already purchased their course material. So as much as we can avoid that, we try to by using this 3-week window. We use Dropbox for file sharing with the liaison librarians to minimize the number of emails with attachments being sent and to organize spreadsheets and subfolders associated with the different phases of the acquisitions workflow. This is helpful if we want to refer back to an earlier phase in the process. An additional component not included in this workflow is data collection. But since we are not under the same time constraints in collecting that data, we usually ask the institution to begin collecting adoptions-related data a few weeks after the links have been shared with faculty. We also ask institutions to share qualitative feedback from faculty, although almost all the responses we have received from faculty are very positive. Next slide, please. And this chart illustrates the count of courses by subject and institution. History, English, and political science are the 3 most highly served disciplines in the program. In reflecting on the data, we see the lack of STEM disciplines being served by this program, with a corresponding interest in those areas for VIVA's open grant program. Based on the course name and numbers, it also appears that the program is serving upper level undergraduate and graduate courses more than lower level courses. This is not entirely surprising, given that the ebook content available for purchases by libraries in Gobi rarely include the latest edition of commercial textbooks, often used in lower level courses. As an aside, we had a faculty member at a community college intentionally adopt an older edition of a commercial textbook that was available through the faculty portal in order to reduce the cost of textbooks to her students. Faculty response to these programs has been very positive. And next slide, please. Now I'm going to hand the microphone over to my colleague, Jenya O'Gara, who's going to discuss some of the challenges and future directions of the program.
Thank you, Sophie. I was joking with my colleagues that I always get the fun section. I always get the challenges section, so excited to do this. Next slide, please, Anne. So there are a number of challenges that we are navigating with this program, and really, I think the fact that our program is both open and affordable is one of those challenges. Because the origins of this program are in the open field, there is a real and a valid concern that funding of other efforts, even where there is no open content available, can dilute this effort and could in the long term be a hindrance to wide-scale adoption of open educational resources. Scalability is something we think a lot about. We're a tiny central office. Sophie does all of this work. And with our current workflow, that includes targeted purchasing and a time-intensive process. Only a subset of courses and students can be helped in this way. And we don't have the ability to provide this service, for example, to all of our schools at once. However, as has been mentioned, the hope of this approach is that these resources will be here to support our institutions that participate for many years, as they're aligned with institutional priorities and curriculum and are part of their permanent collections. Relatedly, the workflow, that is the setting up of the sub-accounts as well as the process for ordering and receiving materials, is also a significant time investment, and it involves a great deal of troubleshooting with the schools and with our vendors. And then finally, data collection for assessment is both time intensive and, at least in its current iteration, completely reliant upon the information about what resources classes may be using being volunteered back to the library and then to us. So there's a lot we can miss in this approach. Next slide, please. So bookstores, VIVA does not work directly with bookstores, but this program is predicated on a close working relationship with a bookstore. So for many of our libraries, this is the first time developing those relationships. For others, their institutions may have non-compete clauses that make libraries wary of embarking down this path, although there's no such issues with the way we approach this program. Content. The majority of the VIVA shared collections and the ebooks available for purchase are purposefully non-traditional textbooks, as has been mentioned. Reviewing course material lists generally, while excluding textbooks with a capital T, is a type of collection development that aligns well with the long-term collection goals of libraries, and is really in keeping with most current library practices, where subject librarians often review courses to ensure the libraries are collecting materials that are relevant to the curriculum and to the libraries. But traditional textbooks then are excluded in this practice. And so although there are many benefits to this approach, it does mean that there are a great number of courses that will not benefit from this particular program. And then finally, automatic billing is a challenge that's kind of on our horizon. Since the COVID-19 crisis began, vendors have stepped up their efforts around the state to build up automatic billing, or this is also known as inclusive access. They most often reach out directly to schools, departments, and in our experience, even some legislative staff to promote automatic billing programs. VIVA's committees have many concerns with this, including the lack of student and faculty agency in these decisions, the inability for many to opt out of such programs and still have the same learning outcomes as their classmates. There's some student privacy concerns and the effect it could have on the long-term goals of open education. That being said, our committees are equally concerned that if VIVA doesn't wade into this arena, as many of our other consortia have done across the country, then it will have problems. Problematic licenses could be made, often at the department level, without kind of the same level of protections for students and faculty that library contracts usually provide. So this is a really sticky area that we're just hyper aware of right now. So next slide, please. In looking ahead, although this program is very successful and it clearly supports VIVA's mission to level the academic playing field, I would say even more during a pandemic when so many of our students' access to library materials has been really even further limited. Figuring out how do we sustain this in ways that make sense both for staffing and for the overall program is really a major focus for us for this next year. So next slide, please. Initiatives that are going to inform how this work evolves include our Virginia Course Materials Survey Task Force, another short name for one of our task forces, that will be deploying a statewide survey to better understand how course material costs impact educational equity among Virginia students. And the results of this work will inform next steps for our open and affordable program broadly, and certainly the curriculum-driven acquisitions piece. We additionally are working to map available OER resources to high enrollment courses in Virginia. And so this has the potential to really expose where there are gaps in open materials that might be filled by library resources. Similarly, but like kind of in the opposite direction, we can use the data about what courses are adopting materials to identify subject areas to do targeted calls for grant applications to develop open educational resources. So that's another important arm of our open and affordable initiative kind of overall. Next slide, please. So none of this is done in a vacuum. We have to look at the program components as a whole regularly to see which parts of them are best serving our community and are sustainable both from a human resources and from a budget perspective. It's important to be very flexible, to be willing to try new approaches, and to recognize that certain tools and approaches may have kind of a limited time utility. This spring, we plan to take the results of the course materials survey and our consortial priorities and goals as a framework and really look at which of our open and affordable efforts to ramp up and which ones to scale back. I imagine, based on the feedback we've gotten from faculty and member libraries so far, that the curriculum-driven acquisitions program is one that we will probably focus on scaling up. And then next slide. And that's really all we have for you today. So thank you all so much for coming, and we're happy to take the questions in the chat that you might have.
All right, so our first question in the Pathable chat is from Ariel Lumnus. In fall 2020, what was the cost that was spent to get that $245K cost savings to students?
I can answer that. Can you repeat the question, Brittany? I was looking for it in Pathable and I didn't see it, so I got a bit distracted.
Yeah, sure. They're looking to know what was the cost that was spent to get the 245K cost savings to students.
Gotcha. I believe, Anne, can you verify? I think we were at approximately 22,000.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize too that involves existing shared books that were matched. So a lot of our that is money we spent. We didn't go back and say, of course, parse out spending on our general collections, but it's kind of a holistic number.
All right, your next question is from Patricia West, who also says hello to Jenya and Anne. They're interested in the statewide student survey, and how will you all ensure that you get the feedback you want and need?
Well, one way is that our task force is representative of all our institution types, and we have, it's actually quite a large task force. For a VIVA task force, usually they're smaller, but I think we have about 14 members on that task force. And because of that sort of wide-ranging representation, I think that's going to help us in distributing the survey and also ensuring the survey meets the needs of the students on their campuses more effectively. We've also intentionally started working with the Virginia Assessment Group, and that was to assist us in working with registrars at the institutions across the state.
I'm not seeing any other questions right now in the Pathables chat, at least, although a lot of hi from VIVA colleagues. Hi to all of you. Ariel is asking about, can you discuss the bookstore's response to this project? I'm going to say something and then hand it off to Sophie, but I would say that the bookstore's response to this project is at an institutional level. So some of our libraries have very close working relationships with their bookstores already. And other ones, this is a new relationship, which they've had to kind of navigate and understand the goals at each one. So it's been smoother in some cases than in others. I will say that I think you heard Sophie mention at the beginning that one of the prerequisites, at least of the curriculum-driven acquisitions program, is that the bookstores be fully engaged in order to even participate in the program. So we actually in Virginia have, I think because of a lot of the work that honestly Virginia Commonwealth University has done, we try very hard to work very closely with our bookstores. This isn't a separate effort. And I will pass it over to Sophie.
I don't have much more to add to what Jenya said. It's generally, as I mentioned in the presentation, that's a requirement for participation, is that they have a collaborative relationship with the bookstore, and the bookstore isn't surprised by anything that we're doing here. So we feel that that's a success, and it really opens up a conversation between the libraries and the bookstores and facilitates collaboration along the way.
Chuck Haymaker has asked if you've had any luck with negotiating access for some of the really large textbook companies like Pearson.
Hi to Chuck. We really haven't done the capital T textbook work very much. We've had some initial conversations with existing vendors of ours who also do textbooks. It's more in that vein than it is the direct large textbook companies. But it, as Jenny said, it's kind of on the horizon to consider for us. We want to really help students no matter how that happens. And we know there's a variety of ways to do that. So I expect it's coming our way. I see one in the Zoom chat. What other consortia have you looked to model this initiative? And I think, you know, we're so lucky to have great consortial colleagues. Some of the ones, I think I would say the primary model would probably be Lewis. Is that fair, Zoe? So if you want to talk more about that connection, maybe.
Yeah, so Lewis has been, I don't know for exactly how long they've been doing a curriculum-driven acquisitions program, but I do know they've been doing it for at least a year or two. And before we started our program, our first pilot with VCU, with the single institution, I did consult with one of our colleagues there to learn a little bit about her workflows. They were working in Gobi, and that also set us up well to start building a relationship with Gobi, sort of understanding how Lewis had been working with them. I think that conversation also really set us up well to understand how the different e-suppliers work, and to understand that some e-suppliers are not equal. In other words, some of them take longer to provide notification of access to content. And so that understanding that was especially helpful for us when we were selecting materials to purchase for our institutions, because we obviously favored e-suppliers who could provide the materials quickly.
Yeah, I would add to that too, in that we also looked to Lewis when we did the faculty textbook portal. They were the first ones to do that. We changed it a little for our needs, but we talked deeply with them, honestly, about starting the whole open and affordable program, all of the components. So thank you, Lewis.
That may be a natural end.
Might be a natural end.
So we are so glad to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to get questions. We have an easy email address for questions. It's just viva@gmu.edu. We're happy to take questions at any time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.